Before superhero blockbusters and reboots, there was Robocop. Released back in 1987, it didn't just arrive, it changed what sci-fi action movies could be. Violent, political, darkly funny, and somehow emotional. It was a movie about a dead cop brought back as a machine that still found room for soul, satire, and sharp social commentary. But behind that iconic image was a production that nearly collapsed at every turn. Studio resistance, physical suffering, creative chaos, and even near fistfights behind the camera. This movie wasn't supposed to work, and that's what makes its legacy even more powerful. Number 1. Robocop was rated X 8 different times. Getting the film past the ratings board turned out to be a battle all of its own. The MPAA handed Robocop an X rating 8 times in a row, not for sexual content, but for sheer brutality. Scenes like Murphy's execution, the ED-209 boardroom malfunction, and the villain shootout were all flagged repeatedly as too extreme even for the anything goes 80s. Each rejection sent Verhoeven back to the cutting room to trim a frame here, soften an impact there. The cuts were often invisible, fractions of seconds, but they all added up. Eventually, the film scraped through with an R rating. Number 2. Robocop shot a guy in the crotch on a whim. Now, the original plan was pretty straightforward. Robocop shoots past a hostage and hits the criminal in the chest. Clean, effective, done. But Verhoeven spotted an opportunity mid-shoot. Noticing how the actress was positioned, he redirected the shot, threw her legs and directly into the attacker's groin. It was a split-second call that turned a routine action beat into one of the film's most darkly iconic moments. Completely unscripted, entirely Verhoeven. Number 3. Peter Weller was essentially trapped inside the suit. On screen, Robocop moves with cold authority. Behind the visor, though, Peter Weller was quietly suffering. That suit topped the scales at just over 80 pounds, and it fought him on everything. Turning his head meant rotating his entire torso. Sitting down risked getting stuck, and the heat that built up inside was relentless. Crew members stood by between takes to help him reposition, cool off, and catch his breath. By the end of production, Weller had shed noticeable weight, mostly through sweat and sheer physical punishment. Number 4. The Robocop set was brutally hot. As if 80 pounds of armor weren't punishment enough, the set itself was also an oven. Studio lighting pushed temperatures to dangerous levels, turning every scene into an endurance test. Weller's frequent breaks weren't about comfort, they were about keeping him upright and functional. The heat slowed filming, frayed nerves, and made an already intense production even harder to manage. Number 5. The script got thrown in the trash. Paul Verhoeven nearly passed on directing entirely. When the script first landed in his hands, he dismissed it outright. Too shallow, too dumb, not worth his time. He didn't even reach the end before tossing it into the trash. Believe it or not, it was actually his wife who rescued it, reading the entire thing and pointing him toward the satire and social commentary buried inside it. He gave it a second chance and found a completely different film, and that second read changed everything. Number 6. Robocop exists because one guy really hated his job. The writer, Ed Neumeyer, was grinding away as a production assistant at Warner Brothers when the idea hit him. Day after day, he watched talented people get treated like disposable cogs in a gigantic corporate wheel. That slow burn of frustration sparked a question. What if corporations owned everything, even law enforcement? What if cops were products? That single idea became Robocop, and it turned out the best sci-fi often comes from very personal frustration. Number 7. Judge Dredd shaped Robocop. Okay, long before Robocop, British comic 2000 AD had already imagined a future where judges served as police, prosecutor, and executioner all at once. That character, Judge Dredd, cast a long shadow over Robocop's development. Both feature faceless enforcers and corporate-controlled dystopias delivering justice without questions. But where Dredd remains a true believer, Robocop begins to remember the man that he was. That crack in the armor is what gives the film its emotional core. Number 8. Stan Lee wanted no part of it. The man behind Spider-Man, Iron Man, and the X-Men was approached to get involved in Robocop's development and quietly declined. No explanation was ever made public. Robocop went on to become a cultural institution without any Marvel involvement, which in retrospect seems to have worked out just fine for everybody. Number 9. Robocop needed approval for his gun. The Auto 9 pistol wasn't just a prop. It actually went through a serious vetting process. The production team brought in law enforcement and firearms specialists to make sure the weapon would read as credible for a near-future cop. What emerged was a heavily modified Beretta with an oversized frame that looked unlike anything audiences had ever seen before. It became as recognizable as the suit itself. Number 10. Peter Weller hid a Walkman inside of his helmet. Here's a detail that makes the entire performance click into place. Weller reportedly tucked a Walkman inside the Robocop helmet and used the music to time his movements. That rhythmic anchor helped him nail the slow, metronomic walk that became so iconic. What looked like machine-like precision on screen was partly just a guy listening to music in a very uncomfortable helmet. Number 11. Murphy's ER scene used real trauma doctors. That frantic hospital sequence after Murphy is shot stands apart from most movie emergency rooms because it was staffed by actual trauma professionals. They weren't given lines. They were told to respond the way they would in a real emergency. The result is a scene full of overlapping voices, sharp commands, and genuine urgency. It's a small detail with a huge payoff. It forces the audience to see Murphy as a real person before he becomes a machine. Number 12. Murphy's death was not planned to be so brutal. The decision to make Murphy's death so drawn out and harrowing wasn't in the original script. Early drafts moved through it quickly, a plot point, not a gut punch. But as production progressed, the filmmakers realized something important. The audience needed to feel that loss. If Murphy's death didn't hurt, nothing that followed would matter. So the scene grew longer, slower, and more difficult to watch by design. Number 13. Kurtwood Smith made up his best lines. Clarence Boddicker's menace comes partly from unpredictability, and a good chunk of that was unscripted. Kurtwood Smith improvised some of his most memorable moments on set, playing the villain not as somebody who wants to seem dangerous, but as someone who genuinely doesn't care either way. The nonchalance is what makes it so unnerving. Some of the lines fans still quote today weren't written by anybody, they just came out. Number 14. A mime taught Robocop how to move. Peter Weller didn't leave Robocop's physicality to chance. He brought in a professional mime to help choreograph every gesture and step. The goal was precision, not just rigidity. Each turn, each pause, each deliberate stride was mapped out in advance. The result was a character who felt genuinely mechanical but never awkward. Those carefully rehearsed movements gave Robocop a presence that the suit alone couldn't have created. Number 15. Actors got paid for stunts they didn't know they did. Kurtwood Smith and Ray Wise both received surprise stunt bonuses during filming, an extra $400 each for a scene that didn't seem to warrant it. The task? Stand near a building explosion. Simple enough, they thought, but the blast was significantly larger than expected, and Smith's jacket actually caught fire. The stunt pay suddenly made a lot more sense. That's the kind of production Robocop was. Number 16. The director nearly fought a makeup legend. Verhoeven's vision for Robocop leaned hard into the grotesque. He wanted the film to be unsettling and polished. That brought him into sharp conflict with effects legend Rob Bottin, the artist behind The Thing's unforgettable creature work. The two clashed repeatedly over how disturbing certain sequences should be, and at least once the tension escalated enough the crew members braced for it to go even further. It didn't, but man, the friction was real. Number 17, Robocop beat Jaws and Snow White at the box office. Nobody expected Robocop to top the charts. It was a hard R sci-fi film with buckets of blood and a deeply cynical worldview, not exactly summer blockbuster territory. And yet it outperformed re-releases of both Jaws and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs at the box office. The margin was slim, but the symbolism wasn't. A brutal satire about corporate America beating beloved family classics is exactly the kind of irony the film would appreciate. Number 18. Robocop was shot in Dallas, not in Detroit. The film is set in a crumbling corporation-owned Detroit, but almost none of it was actually shot there. Dallas, Texas doubled as the city, with its gleaming corporate architecture and wide, impersonal streets doing a convincing job of selling a dystopian near future. The swap was so seamless that most viewers never noticed. Dallas became Detroit, and the illusion held perfectly. Number 19. Robocop sold fried chicken in Korea. In South Korea, Robocop's image took a sharp left turn. He became the face of a fast food fried chicken brand. The same character defined by ultra-violence and anti-corporate satire was repackaged into a cheerful commercial mascot. It's a pretty strange footnote, but also a testament to just how far the character's cultural reach extended. Robocop transcended his own message and became a global icon on his own terms. And at number 20, Detroit finally got its Robocop statue. The whole thing started with a tweet. A user suggested Detroit build a Robocop statue to rival Philadelphia's Rocky. The mayor pushed back. The internet pushed harder. Over $60,000 was crowdfunded. A design was commissioned, and then the delays began. Site disputes, legal complications with MGM over the character rights, and the sculptor Giorgio fighting cancer throughout. The statue was finished in 2017, but didn't find its permanent home until 2025. Nearly 15 years from tweet to installation. For a city like Detroit, that kind of stubborn persistence feels right. It's been almost 40 years, and Robocop still hasn't lost a beat. It survived chaos, resistance, and near failure. What emerged wasn't just a movie, but a cultural landmark.